In Washington, the word lobbying means an effort to influence legislation or government policy. This is done through contact with Congress and with the executive branch's departments and agencies. Lobbying is a huge business with nearly $3.5 billion spent on it in 2009. Laws and regulations can be so complex that it takes legions of lawyers to navigate through them and craft strategies for changing their provisions. Law firms engaged in lobbying perform these services on behalf of their clients. One of the most prominent lobbying firms in Washington is Patton Boggs, where partner Nicholas Allard says he and his colleagues offer essential skills much like a dentist.
I wouldn't and you wouldn't try to do a root canal on ourselves, and that you turn to an expert. And so, put in those terms, the reason why people have expert advocates or lobbyists is because you need expertise. And what we are providing to our clients, whether they're big corporations or individuals, whether they're paying, top dollar for the expertise on a business issue, whether it's pro bono work, and we do a lot of that, is expertise. We're providing analysis, advice, and also expert advocacy.
Part of that expert advocacy Allard refers to is the ability to reach key people who decide on laws and policies. At the Washington Examiner newspaper, reporter Tim Carney explains why familiarity is so important to achieving success for clients.
Most of the time, a lobbyist might be somebody who used to work for a particular congressman. And so he can get a meeting with that particular congressman because a congressman knows he's not going to waste my time, or he's well informed, or he's well educated. And so it's in your interest as a company to hire that former staffer for the congressman. So it's access is what it's really about.
Much like a political campaign, lobbying involves the crafting and delivery of so-called messages directed at lawmakers and regulators in hopes of influencing their decisions. And these messages constantly bombard Washington through a variety of media, as Ken Vogel at the Politico newspaper points out.
The way that these folks are targeted takes many forms, including not just traditional lobbying, where what you have this idea of people going and meeting in a in an office, in a conference room somewhere, but also advertisements in newspapers, advertisements on the subway, advertisements on television during football games on Sunday. All these ads, all this lobbying, even though it doesn't fit into the traditional idea of what we think of when we think of lobbying, is intended to do the same thing, and that is influence the policy outcomes, the regulatory outcomes, the contracting outcomes that take place, the decisions that are made on those issues here in Washington.
One example of a multimedia lobbying bombardment is the fight between two aircraft makers, Boeing and a European company, Airbus, to win a lucrative Air Force contract for new tanker planes. Along with using conventional lobbyists, both companies have put out their messages through TV and newspaper ads and other media. The fight between Boeing and Airbus also highlights the growing effort of foreign corporations and even nations to use lobbyists to influence Washington decisions. Patton Boggs lobbyist Nicholas Allard reflects on how international problems spur international involvement.
Perhaps the biggest change in lobbying is that it is increasingly international and multinational. On most big policy issues, climate change, financial services regulation, there's widespread, almost universal understanding around the world that you can't act unilaterally.
So long as there are interests to protect, profits to be made, and rights to be asserted, there will be people attempting to influence legislation and regulations, sometimes fairly, sometimes not. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.